In the video descriptions, I've said.
Call is now being recorded.
Hi, this is Gary from Santa Maria. I've got a lot to cover tonight. This tape obviously is a little different because George isn't saying, Gary from Santa Maria. You're on the air. Well, I guess I'm on the air, but I'm not on the air with George. And I'm recording this in two different places. I'm recording it on my cell phone, and I'm recording it on Google Voice. This is a very first beta test of this system, so we're going to have to see how it does. But there's a lot that's happened this week, and a lot of fortunate circumstances have led me to this call. We might as well figure out whether the system's going to work or not. Google Voice does a number of interesting things. One of the things it does is record up to a 3-hour message that I'm availing myself of right now. Technically, what happens, and this is where I start my teaching phase. In the video descriptions, I've said over and over that my whole purpose in these web channels is to teach you by parody and by humor how to best utilize YouTube. Well, we're going to jump in the deep end of the pool together. One of the features of Google Voice is a call screening function. That means when my Google Voice number pops up on my caller ID, I can choose to let the call go to voicemail, where it's recorded for 3 minutes, or I can choose to answer the call. Once I answer the call, all I need to do is hit the 4 key and the call starts to be recording. What's happening right now is I answered the call on my forwarding number. I hit the 4 key and I immediately put the hold, just letting the phone that I'm on now be online so there isn't any echo or feedback. So Google Voice is recording it, but I record all my calls myself on my smartphone. I have a recording app, and that app records in very, very high quality. Every time I call coast to coast, the call is recorded. Every time I call customer service at Google Voice, who has spent 2.5 hours with me helping me work this system out, every time I call T-Mobile technical support, the call is recorded from the beginning. Now, when these major corporations are informed that you are recording the call, they immediately tell you, if you are recording, we have to terminate the call, which I find extremely hypocritical. It's okay for them to announce this call is being recorded for quality and training purposes. But if you record the call for your own quality and training purposes, for instance, other YouTube users, then they have to leave the line. But I just don't record my calls for quality and training purposes. Many of you regular listeners have heard me talk about the brain damage that I experienced 3 times in life. From getting hit on the bicycle when I was 7, the head-on collision with a drunk driver when I was 18, and getting hit in the head with a Babe Ruth swing on a baseball bat when I was 44 years old. and it left me with some challenges to overcome, and many of you know how I overcame some of those. But it left me impaired with fine motor skills, meaning it's so difficult for me to type. When you read the descriptions on my YouTube channel, please understand that each of those one-page answers took me anywhere between a day and a half and 2 days to type that one page. My whole life, or at least a good part of it, has relied on tape recording everything, and then I index it. I have thousands and thousands of hours of recorded conversation indexed. I have for what is said. Another side effect of that left frontal lobe brain damage that I had, kind of almost a savant quality, an audiographic memory. But when you can't take notes, you're left with no other option than to record. So the Americans with Disabilities Act says, very simply, that reasonable accommodations will be granted to people with disabilities, and I stand on that. I have to. And my circumstances are no different than those of somebody that are visually impaired. You regular listeners know how many callers, hosts, are told, well, go to our website, send me an email. The contact information is on the website. If you're visually impaired, you know fully well you've got almost an insurmountable roadblock, not to mention people that are completely computer illiterate. But many of us can still use a cell phone. We still have our voice. That voice can be recorded. Google Voice has one other extremely interesting feature. That feature is transcription. Everything that I'm saying now is being transcribed by voice recognition. There is an opt-in procedure with Google Voice that allows you to choose to let them use their artificially intelligent systems to increase the voice recognition accuracy. Likewise, when the voice recognition accuracy has increased and you put the transcription up on YouTube, it becomes a quasi-captioning system for the hearing impaired, because the YouTube community as a whole can then fix any typos in the captioning that they see fit. Way back, and this is important, way back in the early 90s, I worked directly with Art Bell for a number of weeks to try and get the Art Bell Show under Chancellor Broadcasting captioned. Unfortunately, through Art's and I's best efforts, the whole voice recognition thing just hadn't matured well enough. That was in the day that you had to read an entire training paragraph into the 486 processing computer to get a good match on your voice, and how we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked and experimented with the system. The mission quality just wasn't there. Well, Google has pretty much solved that problem, but they're not the only ones. My favorite cellular company, T-Mobile also captions their voicemail. However, T-Mobile's voicemail limits you to 3 minutes, which is an acceptable call on talk radio. If a producer had their dream come true, every call from an outside caller would last only 3 minutes. They somewhat tried to do that. Coast to Coast and George Norrie are extremely generous with the time that they give their callers on the line. Not many other talk shows come close to giving their callers that kind of time. And my respect for T-Mobile grows every day. T-Mobile spent almost 5.5 hours with me total on the phone. I'm looking to post what we talked about in trying to get this voice recognition to work for captioning. My main goal in life, ever since the early 90s with Art Bell, is to caption coast to coast for the hearing impaired. But it has a side benefit. When you caption a talk radio show, that segment, that hour, whether it be open lines or with a guest, is keyword searchable. That means you can keyword search through the archives to find what you want, and of course Google has some very good search engines. Now, that's the upside of what I want to do. For the first time ever, caption coast to coast for the hearing impaired. My mother is almost completely deaf. She is 90 years old. She was transvexed into coast to coast when Art first interviewed Malachi Martin, Father Malachi Martin. That's when she got her love of talk radio. But she still, through her best efforts, can't hear it well enough. It noises out her hearing aid when she tries to listen on AM radio, and believe me, I've tried a number of solutions, and they just haven't worked. She is far better off with her TTY, specialized telephone, and reading captions. There's no reason at all that somebody with a cell phone can't use the Coast to Coast or T-Mobile app, or Google for that matter, and simply tap in, literally, and start reading the show as it's transpiring with some kind-hearted Coast listeners, whatever misrecognition Google Voice, mistranslates. That would be a wonderful thing to an estimated 30 million Americans. It's unfortunate that our hearing impaired community is left out of the rich topics that are sitting in the Coast to Coast Insiders archive. It is unfortunate that the visually impaired, like Bill from West Hartford and other callers that I'll play for you in a minute, directly out of my cell phone when I was on hold. And Jimmy Church turned them over to his producer. It wasn't Tom that night. I don't know who it was. And he took their name for them to be contacted by. They were lucky. There's so many of us out here that can't just quote-unquote hit a website for personal information. You want to try and find out what it's like? I challenge you to do this. Every copy of Windows has an accessory called a screen reader for the visually impaired. Go ahead. Turn on the screen reader. Turn on your monitor. And right from your desktop, try to get to the coast-to-coast archives and then try to play one particular show. Let me know how you do sometime next month. But you expect, you as an overall industry, expect disabled people to get out of their wheelchair and walk across the street. And when they finally cross that street, you will help them. That's what it's like to be told, well, you have to go to our website. No, I don't. I just have to go to YouTube and ask you a question. And you can record, or your customer service people can record your answer and set it up for me to either read or listen to. For God's sakes, that's what the 21st century techie is all about. Why hasn't anybody done it? Oh, because it'll take 1 nano ounce of effort from major corporations to make it happen. T-Mobile is a fine example. I love that company. Their customer service people are out of this world. The customer service at Google Voice was pretty good too, I might add. But when I asked them for permission to publish my audio recordings as a help manual, so anybody wanting to do this will hear for themselves, step by step, what their technical support team told me the first time. They said they would call me back, both companies, Google Voice and T-Mobile. When they told me that they would call me back with an answer, I said, remember, I record everything. I have yet to hear back from either company. It's caught in the bureaucracy. One other thing regarding Google Voice that needs to be mentioned here, and T-Mobile for a smaller degree. Google collects information. Catherine Albrecht, who I've spoke with on the air a couple of times, and preceding this demonstration, I will talk with again, has reminded us time and time again, Google is a vacuum cleaner. It's bad enough they have your complete search histories, your face for voice, for face recognition, your voice for voice recognition. They can even tell when you like the looks of somebody of the opposite sex if you're looking into your camera because of your pupil expansion. And now you are going to traffic your personal calls through a Google Voice number. So now they know who your phone contacts are. It's a little frightening. But when they offer such a resource, you have to weigh right to privacy, which is practically non-existent now anyway, let's be realistic, and the needs for additional service by those of us with disabilities. It's an important point. So be informed that when you call one of my 2, 3, 4, 5, I have 10 YouTube channels going right now. To answer another question, I have segregated my YouTube channels into covering different topics. I had to do that. And now for my last point, and I'm going to close off this little demonstration. I'm glad I'm recording this in 2 places in case Google Voice doesn't get it all. I know fully well my cell phone well, but I am getting just a slight echo on the line once in a while. I don't know if it'll show up in the recording. But I wondered what you thought of my graphic. George Norrie, Howabee, is that how you pronounce his name? I'm not by my notes. The gorilla that was just shot, and John Laguerre of T-Mobile Industries. Did you figure it out yet? I wanted to show what, that took me about 45 minutes to an hour to piece together. I'm very good at photoshopping. I was trained in it since, again, the very early 90s with a card called True Vision. I wanted to talk to Lauren Weinstein tonight and get him to confirm some things, but some bizarre things happened when I called into that, and that's what I want to address. When I called in, Tommy took my call, and I will play. I won't bother to describe it here. Since I recorded the call, I'll play it to you, what he said. And I will also play my last call with Jimmy Church and what happened on that call. And then I'll include one more call when I got dumped by George. So to all you trolls out there who apparently hate the very air that I breathe, either because I have more than an appreciation of astrology or don't like genetically engineered crops, or for whatever your reason, you may enjoy this, watching Gary get dumped. Well, it's like getting dumped by a girlfriend that comes back to you. In defense of Jimmy Church and in the defense of George, on both occasions, I deserved to be dumped. I've been around talk radio a long time. I tried to start a show once again with Art in the early 90s. Well, not with Art. I had contracted with KWAN Radio, KDON in Las Vegas, the single station that Art was on at the time. I guess this was the middle 80s, when he was only on one station before he syndicated his first 20 stations under Chancellor Broadcasting. Anyway, that 2-hour time slot was open. I went out and recruited my own anchor sponsors that were quite solid and had just come off of hosting and producing a radio show at KIEV in Los Angeles, where I was tutored by George Putnam. just to give you a brief background. And that got my feet wet into broadcasting and producing. The mistake that I made with Jimmy Church, is that I had told his call screener was not Tommy that night. I had told his call screener that I wanted to talk about a particular topic. I'll remember what the topic was. I don't right now. I never use notes, obviously, when I call the radio show or when I'm doing this. But anyway, when I heard those two technically and physically challenged people that wanted to talk to the guest but couldn't go to their website, and they had 2 calls that night, it hit a hot button with me, and I was overwhelmed. So when I got on the air with Jimmy, the very first thing that I said was, I hardly ever do, I never do this, but with your permission, and I'm quoting, you'll hear the tape in a moment, I would like to change topics. Well, I'm sure that redlined Jimmy's spider sense, being a seasoned broadcaster. And then when I started to give out my Google Voice last 7 digits, I had no intention of giving out the area code. My only intention was to increase traffic a little bit to the Coast Insider's website because it's woefully down. That's because I cross-link all 10 of my sites. It keeps people a little off balance, and the majority of my correspondence is done on email, not necessarily Gmail. I do have a secured server. But I wanted to get my subscriber and view count a little over a couple of 110. But when I tried to give out the phone number and I changed topics completely from what I had told the call screener, that did it. He dumped me. He would not have been doing his job if he had not. He didn't know where I was going. There's been occasions in the past where people have given out phone numbers to the 900 adult talk dirty lines, or tried to slip in some real scammy products that were offered on a recording. People that produce talk radio knows this happens all the time. So I made 2 mistakes with Jimmy. It would have been fine if I probably would have changed topics. He seemed the most cool with that. But I dropped the other shoe on my foot when I tried to give out a phone number. And keep in mind, Jimmy doesn't know who I am near as well as George. Jimmy, from me to you, you did a fine job, my friend. I needed to learn a lesson that night. And I learned another lesson with George a couple of months ago when I had an intention of talking about an intention of getting Bernie Sanders to win the election. And I told George to put his finger over the dump button in case he didn't like what I was going to say. Oh, he put it over the dump button, okay, immediately, and dumped my silly tail before I had a chance to say anything. So you live and learn as a caller, even if you used to be a producer. So my advice to you listeners, Don't change topics that you tell the screener that you're going to talk about, and never tell George to get ready with the dump button. So I've got a lot off my chest, and I'd like to know what you think about my three gorillas. I consider George Norrie the 450-pound gorilla of alternative talk radio. I consider John Legere the 450-pound gorilla of the uncarrier crowd, alternative talk and uncarrier. And then we have our deceased gorilla. Tell me what you think about the captions. It may be considered by some inappropriate to be parodying a tragically deceased gorilla. If that's the way you feel, comment and let me know. But what I wanted to do with that image is show what any common guy out there with his own little YouTube channel trying to express himself, what kind of information you can convey using one image with an audio track playing behind it. It is far simpler to do this audio editing behind an image than it does to try and do running video. I can update these audio files anytime I want and keep the same image intact. Piece of cake, easy. So easy even a disabled person can do. Believe me, I know. So I wish you to have a nice day. I've gotten a few things off my chest that I wanted to get off, and had an opportunity of clearing the air from what some people thought was harsh treatment of me by Jimmy. It was just the opposite. It was me who treated Jimmy and his producer harshly, and I deserved to be unceremoniously dumped for my efforts. I came down on myself with both feet. If I would have done one thing or the other, not change topics or not give out the website, the Google Voice phone number, that Google monitors all your phone calls to me. That's a lovely thought. But no, they were in the right. I was in the wrong. And I owe Jimmy an apology. Thank you, Jimmy. Won't happen again. Okay, I'm going to get out of here now and see what the response is going to be to this video. Oh, by the way, that's my favorite word, you know that? Oh, by the way, one other thing. I forgot. Oh, well, there is no other thing. All right, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Coast AM, and I'm going to try to get everybody in. So let's go straight West Coast, Santa Maria, California. Gary, you're up.
Oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would it bother you if I totally take a left-hand turn from the topic that I told your screener? I've never done that before.
Gary, just as long as it's really quick.
Okay, it has to do with your own Fade to Black website, and the last 3 callers that were having a hard time negotiating websites for either handicapped reasons or messages.
Right.
I started the Coast Insiders YouTube channel. I just hooked my Google Voice account up to it. I recommend that you seriously think about maybe doing that with your own website. That telephone number, 298-65...
Hey, Gary,
Wait, I'm not going to give it. It's 298-6...
I'm not doing that on this show. Sorry about that, Gary. Let's go to Snowflake, Arizona, and
Let's go to Gary in Santa Maria, California. Hi, Gary. Go ahead.
Well, I couldn't have asked for a better preface to my question, and I owe it to Jeff and Culver for planting the idea firmly in my head that I almost missed. Donald Trump, one of his first major splashes was on Alex Jones' show, and I would say, compared to the Coast audience, the only massive audience that could be more passionate about things would be Alex's show. Now, that's not a mistake on Trump's part, even early on. He knew exactly who Alex Jones was, what his listeners believed, and he chose to go on that show. No other candidate did. He picked up that passion. So my question is, and I'm trying to do it Jeff style here, is do you think that mass intention from a fired-up audience, Coast included, can overcome the insidious hydra, one colored red, the other colored blue, that has entwined itself in our corporations and entwined itself in the political system, can be undone by intention of, like, for instance, get your finger on the dump button, George, but I won't embarrass you.
No, I'll do it right there now because I'll answer the question. I don't think you can alter events like that. You might be able to move weather and manipulate stuff like that, but this is a bigger fight.
I think that the caller raised some very good points in that Donald Trump's support seems to be overshadowing the manipulation systems, and so I think that the establishment is extremely scared because even with the electronic voting machines obviously easily being able to be hacked, this is a well-known and open secret, even with all of the different tactics of voter fraud, Trump's popularity may be difficult for them to stop. And that brings me back to our original conversation when we started the show, is I fear that the only way they may see to stop
let's not even go there, Mark. Don't even go there.
Yeah.
Because
but I think that
too many sickos out there.
You know, when I saw Alex Jones had Donald Trump on the show, my jaw dropped, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a huge interview. And to see Trump going on the show, I think shows a lot of he's willing to really put himself out there.
Well, they did some research. I know this for a fact, and they realized there's a strong younger base there that Trump needed to get to because he wasn't getting to that.
He also was recommended by, I think, a personal friend or a business associate, Roger Stone, I think
That was a catalyst.
The guy who sort of gave the okay, and I'm sure that Donald Trump has seen, I mean, he has to know who Alex is. He has to see the InfoWars report.
Well, you know what? I bet he didn't even know who he was until he started doing the research into it. Mark, hold on. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more. And welcome back to Coast to Goes. We'll get to your final calls with Mark Dice. And Mark, before